I'm Stephen Ganchow. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Life in Progress. Life in Progress is a brief time that we spend together each month talking about the practical ways that we continue to grow and what God is already doing in each one of us. It's probably not a surprise to you that I talk about anger on something of a regular basis. We live in a world filled with frustrations of various types and sizes, all kinds of disappointments, quite frankly, a world where sin has woven its way into the very fabric of everything. I think there are things in life that we see as foolish and upsetting. And honestly, there are things in life that we would probably describe as unnecessary. And it's like, why did that happen? And it's completely natural that we have emotional responses to those things. God designed us for emotions, and one of those emotions is anger. So we're going to do a short series on anger, and today we're going to try and wrap our arms around the subject just a little bit. And then in future episodes, what we're going to do is think about anger from a couple of different vantage points. One of them will be, what is it like? How do I manage it? How do I experience it when I'm angry at God? And how do I manage anger? And is it right when I'm angry at others? And then how, in general, what are some principles that I can use and we can use to manage anger, overcome sinful anger, being angry and not sinning, and related components. What we're going to do today then is put some assessment principles in place to understand this complex emotion. In kind of doing a quick study of the word, you're actually going to find a lot of different definitions for anger. And while they're all similar, none of them quite agree on everything. So what I thought I would do is give us something of a working definition of the subject. Anger is a response from our moral core against a perceived wrong or injustice. More pointedly, it is a feeling of antagonism pointed at something that exists on a variety of degrees. It exists on a spectrum when we believe someone has wronged us and violates our sense of right and wrong. So anger exists in a way that it can actually be right or wrong. Anger can be both moral or it can be immoral. Anger is right when it moves us to respond correctly to a perceived or real injustice. Anger is wrong when it moves us to retaliate out of our own sense of rightness, our own sense of perceived rights, or a sense of justice that is from us and not from God. And that's part of how we've got to wrap our mind around this. Am I angry at something that God has attached a moral qualifier to, or am I angry because my own sense of justice has been violated? And these are important considerations for us. So how do we assess anger? How do we determine if anger is justifiable or retaliatory? That's the progress that we'll pursue this episode. And we'll do it through a biblically based series of assessment questions to ensure that we're practicing Ephesians 4, 26 and 27. Those verses say, be angry and don't sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger and give an opportunity to the devil. Sinning in anger is a direct opportunity for the enemy to introduce great pain into our lives. So we want to avoid that. How we're going to do that, again, is through some assessment level questions. So let's look at some of those assessment level questions in an effort to ensure that we are considering anger biblically and ensuring that we are not letting anger get the best of us. So we've got some questions that we are going to consider. The first is this: what led to my anger? What led to my anger? What was the situation? What was the inciting factor? What were the components that led me to have anger as a response to the situation at all? Understanding what were the contributing factors to my anger will help me determine, should I be angry in this situation? Is it warranted? Is the people involved, are they contributing to this for the purpose of stirring me up emotionally? What is the reason that I'm engaged in this at all. We want to assess what led us here because context, as we've talked about before in a variety of ways, context is often key. And if we understand the context, we might be able to manage our emotions a little bit better. I think a second question is, how did I respond? How did I respond in anger? So if I'm angry, was I volatile in my anger? Was my attitude short? Did I start to become snippy with other people? Was I more concerned about correcting someone? Was I more concerned about my sense of justice? Or was I more concerned about teaching people? Did I belittle someone? Was my response to put them down? How we respond in anger, our response says a lot about whether or not our anger is justified. Which brings us to our third question. Is my anger justified? Justification is a significant thing. Is my perception of being wronged actually accurate? Or am I annoyed at being inconvenienced? Is my perception of what led here accurate? And as a result, is my justification welling up from within me? Or is this a perceived injustice? Am I frustrated because someone has infringed on me? Am I angry because my plans were uprooted? Or am I angry because there is a moral qualifier here where God says we should be frustrated about this? And remember too, anger exists on a spectrum. There are ways, and I mean the Bible has all kinds of language for anger, wrath being among them. Even bitterness can be a form of anger. So helping answer the question, is it justified and where does it come from, will assist you in determining whether or not anger here is something that you should be engaged in. And then fourthly, and this is a significant question as well, what or who is my anger about? Who or what is my anger about? Is it about me? Is it about the person or thing that we're angry at? Is it about God? Is it at God? In general, I would submit that we should spend very little time being angry on God's behalf. I think we should be angry at sin, but God is holy. God is going to distribute justice in God's way. We are the tools of God's justice, and we should certainly feel angry at perceived injustice, but the question we should ultimately be most considered about is, am I in the way? Am I angry on God's behalf and motivated towards holiness? Because so often we're motivated towards correction. Or am I angry at something that needs to be resolved? I think we tend to lean towards how unpleasant it makes us feel, and it's not as much about the fact that a holy God has been offended. And that is a significant thing. So we need to ask ourselves, are we concerned about how we feel, or are we concerned about God's standards? These are sobering things, and I think for a short series on anger, where we start. What led to my anger? What were the contributing factors? How did I respond in anger? Is my anger justified? And who is my anger about? What is my anger about? If you can assess these four questions, it's going to put you in the position to at least self-examine to a place where you're not wandering into sin and maybe not even knowing it. So again, this is a place to start. We'll unpack anger again in future episodes, but this assessment is to simply lay the foundation. So thanks for joining me for this first episode on anger of Life in Progress. Be sure to give this content a thumbs up and subscribe for future content. Use the comments section as well. I'll be there to engage with you, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time for another growth